will be there for you when the world. I'll light this candle. I'll light this candle. Hi, good morning, good day, good evening. We have people here from absolutely all over the world. It's so moving to see you all saying hello in so many languages from so many locations around the world. It's really inspiring, and we are so very happy that you're here.
Nous sommes vraiment très ravis de vous avoir. C'est très
Sorry, if folks, if the panelists wouldn't mind muting while we're going through. So we have so many amazing people here to share their stories and experiences with you today, and I'll be introducing each of them in turn. So I want to just start by welcoming all the attendees from all over the world. We're so happy that you're here and connecting in this moment, in this amazing way, the marvels of modern technology. We're just really thrilled that you're here. I want to let you know that the event is being translated live in Spanish, Italian, French, and Portuguese. So I'm going to try to remember to take my time as I speak to allow our translators to share it with the rest of the world. You can select the language of your choice. There should be a language interpretation link that you can click on. So without further ado, let's get started. The 10th of December is a key day for human rights. In fact, on the 10th of December, 1948, the General Assembly of the United Nations, meeting in Paris, adopted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. This document, the UDHR, holds the Guinness World Record as the most translated document. And yet, far too many people are still unaware of their basic rights as human beings. And that brings me to another important date that we remember today with this global conference. 20 years ago, Youth for Human Rights International was born. So today we are celebrating 20 years of service that gives life and meaning to the UDHR. So having that said, let me outline what's ahead for us in this global conference. We have renowned human rights experts, activists, and advocates, and they're all here to share their thoughts and experiences about what it means to champion human rights around the world. We'll also award outstanding people who should be considered heroes for human rights. And we'll have some messages from Youth for Human Rights activists all around the world. We'll see just a brief glimpse of them. And please forgive us for not being able to give more space to so many people who've sent their greetings and messages of support. Their contribution is very much appreciated, and we really value their support in the cause of human rights. So now I get to introduce our first speaker. She's the founder and president of Youth for Human Rights International, Dr. Mary Shuttleworth. Born and raised in apartheid South Africa, she saw the devastating effects of discrimination and realized education was a vital tool for improving human rights. Since 2001, she's circled the globe to more than 90 countries, spearheading the global human rights education movement, and we celebrate her here today. Welcome, Dr. Shuttleworth.
Thank you so much, and welcome. Today, we celebrate 73 years of the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights and 20 years of Youth for Human Rights International, reaching, teaching, and inspiring our youth to become advocates for tolerance and peace. Today, we announce our Youth for Human Rights International proclamation to the governments of Earth and to all educators, organizations, and people of goodwill on this 20-year commemoration of Youth for Human Rights International's commemoration. May this be the call to embrace together and achieve the Universal Declaration's noble, essential aims, and may the generations prevailing 20 years on be able to acknowledge that humankind has at last risen to make human rights a reality for all time to come. Since the inception of Youth for Human Rights International in 2001, we saw human rights education as vital in both the formal and informal education sectors. With the help of thousands of like-minded individuals, groups, organizations, and officials worldwide, we conceptualized, developed, and expanded into a global concern. Teachers and professors inspired their students in classrooms. Community leaders, religious leaders, mentors, and volunteers took the message to large banquet halls, soccer fields, and on soccer balls, in train stations, city squares and parks, and of course, online. Taxi and bus drivers showed the videos to their passengers. Murals popped up in schools and community walls, and along with pop-up dance groups who shared the message at the Eiffel Tower in Paris and elsewhere. News media, social media, radio, and TV raised their voices, supporting those 30 universal human rights. I'm a teacher. Books, documents, manuscripts, and proclamations are ultimately as valuable as they are read, understood, and shared. In Australia, a young 5-year-old preschooler with disabilities used our short videos to turn her bullies into her friends. A 10-year-old formed a human rights club in a library in India. Anyone who wanted to join her team had to recite all 30 rights to become a member of their group. They delivered workshops for young and old alike. A teenager reached out to the local police department, resulting in a national campaign teaching almost all in the armed police force. Another youth used his small motorbike to travel to communities living in remote areas, all to promote human rights. There's so many more stories I can share, but I think that gives you an idea of the amazing youth who have poured their hearts and souls into this campaign. And Youth for Human Rights is a voluntary campaign. Everyone volunteers their time, talents, resources, and unique expertise to help promote human rights, simply because they care and understand that knowing human rights is a first step foundation for building a more peaceful world. So, as we reflect on the last 20 years, I must admit it was a bit emotional for me even to look back to how we started, when we started, and with what we started. Just a big, almost impossible dream. But today we celebrate your accomplishments. Because of you, millions now know the 30 universal human rights and responsibilities. Today we celebrate you and look forward to hearing from you. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Mary. That was amazing as always, very inspiring. And I just want to underscore that this is all about the volunteers all over the world, the folks who are here, folks who are just maybe hearing about this for the first time. You are the Youth for Human Rights movement, and you are the reason that it is possible to do the work that gets done around the world. So we're so glad that you're here. So our next guest is His Excellency, Dr. Bertrand Ramcharan. And let me say, by the way, I'm obviously an American. We have all these languages and cultures represented in terms of the folks that you'll be hearing from and in terms of everyone who's here. So please forgive my American mispronunciation of any of these beautiful names. You'll hear from these folks themselves, obviously, as well. So our guest is His Excellency, Dr. Bertrand Ramcharan, United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights in 2003 and 2004. He is a champion of peace building with contributions including international human rights law, political science, enriching students as a university professor, chancellor, and author or editor of 40 books. Welcome, Dr. Ramshor.
Thank you very much. It is a great pleasure to be with you, and let me congratulate Youth for Human Rights International for the wonderful work you have done over the past 20 years. Well, now, you have spoken, and Mary, dear Mary, you have spoken about the significance of the Universal Declaration. I want to ask you all to keep a few thoughts in mind. The first thought I would ask you to keep in mind is that we are living in a time when the present and the future connect as probably at no previous time in history. What do I mean by this? You know that the earth, humanity, the inhabitants of the earth are all facing survival threats. And in recent times, we have seen at least 3 manifestations of this. We see hundreds of thousands of people fleeing across borders, fleeing climate change, fleeing oppression. We've seen people not having access to vaccines. And we ask ourselves, how is it possible that in our times, we don't have a system for a more just distribution of vaccines? And we see in our times when human rights are grossly violated in major ways. You know your world better than I do. Think of the poor, think of the disadvantaged, think of the discriminated. So cut a long story short, our world is under threats. The present and the future meet in dramatic ways. Listening to, watching the video, listening to Dear Mary, the thought occurred to me that we need to continue to strive to build what I would call a universal culture of human rights. I ask you to keep in mind this expression, a universal culture of human rights. This is what Youth for Human Rights International is striving for. Then I would ask you to keep in mind protection of the right to life. Ask yourself in your own countries, how many people don't have access to the means for a decent existence? Food, shelter, clothing, health, safeguarding the right. I ask you to take away from this meeting, we must strive to protect the right to life. I would ask you to keep in mind also the very first article of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the right to dignity. All human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. I ask you to keep in mind, as I said, the right to life and the right to dignity. I ask you to keep in mind the right to equality. Think about discrimination against individuals and groups, minorities and indigenous peoples, people of different religions and cultures and skin colors. The fight for equality is a major fight of our time. And finally, I ask you to keep in mind the right to protection. Torture, executions, violence against women, violence against children, religious intolerance, the list is unending. How are we to protect human rights in this kind of situation? And then, of course, we are living in a time, finally, in which different systems of government are clashing with each other. and you ask yourself, what should be the rallying or the unifying document among all of these systems? And the rallying and unifying document is and should be the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So let me say I'm touched, I'm humbled to be with you, and I wish you a successful session. Thank you very much.
Hello from Italy. I'm Eleonora, and it's great to be part of this very special Human Rights Day celebrating the 20th anniversary of Youth for Human Rights International. I've worked on human rights education for over 15 years, and I know that these rights come with responsibility. That's why we need to spread the declaration even more, to have more responsibility and peace amongst us.
Hi everyone, my name is Musa Cham. I'm from the Gambia. I'm so much happy and excited to be part of this year's anniversary, celebrating the 20th anniversary of Youth for Human Rights International. Human rights education promotes a better understanding on what human rights are. Again, promote more human rights friendly environments and environments that will uphold the protection, practice, and respect for human rights. For the past years, Youth for Human Rights International have promoted a better understanding on what human rights are and create more awareness on what these human rights are. It has also activated many of us around the world to bring human rights awareness on a broad scale. Happy anniversary to all of us.
Namaste everyone. Greetings from India. My name is Yash Goyal and I'm glad to be a part of this virtual conference. As we celebrate the 20th anniversary of Youth for Human Rights International, I would like to thank each one of you for your constant efforts in making human rights education a global reality. I wish everyone a very happy International Human Rights Day.
Thank you so much to Dr. Ramcharan. And just seeing those selfie videos is so striking. It reminds me that human rights are for absolutely every single person on the planet, right? It doesn't matter how old you are, what culture you come from, what language you speak, what color your skin is, what gender you are. It's for literally everyone on the planet. And just seeing the diversity of speakers and the people who are passionate about this issue really reinforces that. I love seeing those. Our next speaker is Michael Shivak, Counselor General for the World Cultural Organization, a leader in interreligious dialogue. He's taught spirituality in the School of Social Welfare at Stony Brook University. He taught at the Lakota Institute at Lehigh University, has served on several boards, and is the author of 5 books. Welcome, Mr. Shivak.
Hello, everyone. Benvenuto, bienvenue, bienvenuto. Welcome to everyone. This is the holiday that is the real holiday that precedes all of the festivities that we're going to go through. You know, I was asked to speak a little bit about what religions can do for human rights. I'm a rabbi. And so this to me is the holiday preceding all holidays. Why? Because religion, as far as I'm concerned, has a critical role. It is the government of the soul. It's the government of the soul. There are governments of all different types out there that are telling everyone what to do with their bodies, telling them how to run their economic systems, how to artificially manage currency so it looks like we're wealthier than we are. All sorts of things, but there are no governments for souls. The soul of each individual is what is critical. And this is
something?
Youth for Human Rights is such an incredibly important organization. Now, I want to ask the question, which I think is the philosophical question that we have to really be prepared for, which is who has the right to give you rights? I mean, is it a relative? Is it a teacher? Is it an organization? Is it the United Nations that prepares a list of 30 universal human rights and they endow you with rights? What I'd like to say, and this is a religious point of view, which is why we need governance of the souls, which is where religions need to come in, is that no one, no government, no religion No person, not yourself, gives you your human rights. To use the phrase from the Declaration of Independence, which was attempting to be a secular document because of the previous abuses of religion, ironically, these are rights endowed by the Creator. And I don't care if you believe in God or you don't believe in God, but everyone here must admit there is a mystery that is bigger and beyond us. And the sanctification of our rights takes place because of the mystery that is bigger than all of us. Even if you don't know what that mystery is, please have the humility to understand that you cannot fathom any individual completely. You cannot know how they think, how they feel. You cannot know these things. You must respect them as souls. These souls are the foundation of human rights, and the term right is just in a way a kind of legal fiction to avoid a lot of religious language which caused problems. And here I think religions have an incredible role in terms of governing the souls so that they are sanctified in this world order where people are debating all sorts of government forms that are contradicting. Without governance of the soul, there is no compass for all of these other nations. We need that. Now, religions need to get honest. Part of the reason why we are having to declare ourselves as governors of the soul is because in the past, religions became excessive, violated individuality, and passed the torch of truth to a secular scientific approach. Well, guess what? After COVID, everything is going full circle. The secular scientific approach is increasingly dangerous. It's increasingly conglomerating and consolidating power. It's now going to the point where it's digitalizing it, and we can track everyone everywhere. The very thing that was a corrective for dangerous religion is now itself becoming dangerous and needs the voice of every single religion: Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Zoroastrian, native, indigenous religions. Their voices must be heard as a correction to the machinery of body government, I call it, not soul government, body government, that endangers the rights and the humanity and the intrinsic value and sacredness of each individual human being. So I call on all of religions because you are the governors we need. You are the balancing forces. You are the voices of reason now that the secular world has overstepped its bounds. When we have to be reminded that the most important thing in an economy is not bond prices or Wall Street or manipulating interest rates, but that the most important thing in an economy is healthy working people. And we have to be reminded by a microscopic virus in order to get us to see our humility. We know that the larger governments of the body need the voices of the governance of the soul. And I call on every religion to get your voice out there and balance the insanity that is going so we can get one human approach to how to live in this absolutely beautiful reality in this incredible world that we've been given. So thank you, Youth for Human Rights. Thank you, Mary. Thank everyone in the entire world for, at my old age, you supply me with youth. You know, I get a dose every time I work with you. And it's been going on for some time. So God bless you all. Feel my heart. And thank you for being here, and spread it so far that we don't even ever have to get together, because every interaction that we have on the street will be another meeting for Youth for Human Rights. Thank you.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much. I think we are so fortunate. I hope everyone watching agrees that the quality of the speakers today is really extraordinary. It's so many thought-provoking points made and so relevant to the conversation. Just that was really lovely. So thank you very much. Good. Our next speaker is Dr. Wafiq Mustafa, president of the British Arab Network. He is a distinguished medical doctor, politician, author, and historian. He was chairman of the UK Egyptian Community Association, president of the British Arab Medical Association, and member of the Parole Board Review Committee. Welcome, Dr. Mustafa.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm really feeling very honored to be with this great number of people speaking about human rights. I'm born in Cairo, and so I am a little bit influenced by what happened in the Arab world, in the Middle East, and really effective religion on human rights. I think effective religion is very, very important. And I feel one thing, we as a Muslim or liberal Muslim, that we need to move a bit more forward. We need to look at words which may be demonizing in religion, like infidel. The word infidel, in my view, need to be criminalized, need to be banned by human rights institutions throughout the world, because it demonizes a large section of society, and as well it's used politically to demonize others. So I think it's very, very important. I think human rights is essential for people to feel happy, to feel harmonized, to feel peace with themselves, because without peace with yourself, you can never have peace with others. And I wish one point, if I may mention, that we could have had an Arabic translation or Arabic interpretation, because you've got 26 Arab countries, at least, who speak Arabic, and as well, not a single country have freedom or have real human rights history. So I think having next time, hopefully you can have Arabic translation so they can join us, because a lot of them can speak English good enough to be able to contribute. So as well as they speak in Arabic will be good. And as well as they can listen. In the Arab world particularly, I could see there's no freedom of speech, there's no rule of law. In a country like Egypt, there's 60,000 people imprisoned, there's 3,000 people disappeared or killed, there's a lot of extrajudicial killing, accidents, which mysterious accidents happen and people disappear. These sort of things, particularly the media is totally controlled in the Arab world, as we know. And even the international media does not have access. You cannot find a Reuters or Washington Post can go to a village in Egypt or Arab country easy without being stopped or without being controlled. So I think it's very important to look at the human rights issue from that point. So the education curriculum need to change to reflect the freedom and liberty for children to be able to investigate and read, and as well to let books to be sold in the Arab world. I'm talking why I'm focusing Arab world, because there's a lot of movement over the last 50 years. There is democracy took place in, sorry, I just someone, sorry. There's democracy took place in South America, in countries in Africa and Asia. There's only a few books which needs to focus on human rights, particularly in the solid bloc of the Middle East of 20 odd countries, the Arab League countries, have not a single country with human rights record. And that has to be borne in mind. That's very important. There's one or two countries in Asia, there's one or two countries in Africa needs addressing too. But certainly the Muslim world, particularly the Middle East, needs really close look and the close focusing and reform. But certainly words like infidel needs to be looked at clearly and need to be stopped because it demonizes people. And I want to focus on it again and again. I think the human rights are very important for us all, and we all celebrate the human rights declarations. And I always supported human rights in Egypt and Arab world and the world for the last 30 years consistently without stopping, by exposing governments and asking for transparency, rule of law. In Egypt, they have glass box for in the trial courts that the accused people are not allowed to speak except when the judge allowed them to speak. So they can block. And President Morsi was one clear example where he was put in soundproof glass cage to stop them be able to talk to the media or anybody hear what he says. So I think transparency is very important. There's a young man, blogger in Egypt, had 8 years imprisonment just for trying few blogs. His mother is a professor. So we sit outside the prison for several hours to be allowed to see her son every 2-3 weeks, and she goes every day. I think we have to focus on this part of the world as well. And thank you very, very much for letting me speak.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Dr. Wakif Mustafa, thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
So it's now my privilege to present the first Human Rights Award of today's event. The Human Rights Award is presented in recognition of this recipient's dedication and outstanding service to promoting human rights set out in the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Ms. Ellen Firestone is an international human rights ambassador with United for Human Rights. She also serves on the board of national and international organizations, such as the National Council of the UN Association of the United States of America and Global Education Motivators. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Ellen Firestone.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Will and Youth for Human Rights. I am honored to receive this prestigious award. And congratulations to Dr. Shuttleworth and Youth for Human Rights International for 2 decades of outstanding service. It is amazing how much the organization has grown, educating millions on their human rights. Happy 20th anniversary, and to many more years of education and creation with our global youth. It has been an amazing journey over the past decade to be able to educate both youth and adults on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights with the ease and simplicity of the Youth for Human Rights materials. I was privileged to meet so many great people along the way, and one that stands out is Mrs. Ella Torrey. She was former public information officer to Eleanor Roosevelt, who became a good friend of mine. And Ella was actually in the room in Paris the night the document was adopted. So when the UN General Assembly first adopted the UDHR in 1948, they called upon all member countries to cause it to be disseminated, displayed, read, and expounded, principally in schools and other educational institutions. Think about what the world could be like today if the UDHR had been taught broadly for the past 73 years. In my opinion, this document and work is as important or even more important today than it was in 1948. I'm going to share with you a few things I've learned over the years and what I see as future for our Youth for Human Rights representatives. I'll start with Article 29, responsibility, with a capital R. Everyone has duties to the community in which alone the free and full development of the human personality is possible. We at United for Human Rights and Youth for Human Rights have a tremendous responsibility to continue this important work of educating all people on the UDHR. While we may know there are 30 human rights, there are nearly 8 billion people on this planet at this time, and I'm really not sure what percentage of them know. The point is, everyone has the right to know their 30 rights. What I think we'll all agree on is there is much more good work to do in this area. 8 billion sure is a large number. I've spent over a decade doing workshops and talks on the topic, human rights from education to action. The most common question I've gotten is, why didn't we ever learn this before? Well, it's a good question and good thing we have a solution. I found a lot of agreement on the UDHR itself, not much disagreement on any of the articles. Occasionally, people have mentioned rights that may be missing, such as the right to clean water. And of course, human beings should have the right to a clean and healthy environment. Clean air, clean water, clean soil. It goes without saying that without a healthy environment to live in, we won't have human beings or other life forms for very long. One step of my workshop is to get participants to identify the rights they are most passionate about, then come up with a plan on how to promote or protect those rights, which may include connecting with a non-governmental organization who is already having an impact in that area. You'll find that you can dig very deep into any of the 30 articles and create lots of solutions for each of them. Also, I found if you are working on something you're passionate about, not only will it bring the human right to life, but it brings those working on it more to life as well. So with knowledge comes responsibility. We have the important job of continuing to educate the world's people on their human rights so they can promote and protect them for themselves and others. And 8 billion is no small task. Of course, governments, the public sector, and businesses, our private sector, have their role to play in all of this. They will do their thing. However, there is a third sector, civil society, us, who also have a big role to play. In my opinion, the third sector holds tremendous untapped power. In a democracy, human right number 21, the will of the people shall be the basis of the authority of government. Businesses also work for the people because without consumers, there is no business. So it's up to us to use our power responsibly and to use our imaginations to create ways to truly bring these human rights to life. I can attest it is work that is fun and rewarding, but at times I did need to confront some horrific human rights violations. I personally think human trafficking is one of the greatest evils of our time. It's hard to believe that we'd even need to say, no one shall be held in slavery or servitude, but both labor trafficking and sex trafficking do exist all over this world. I've had the opportunity to interview some human trafficking survivors turned advocates, true human rights heroes. Finally, I want you to know to really get that you can make a difference. I never thought I'd be speaking at the UN or National Constitution Center or to a room full of Fulbright scholars or doing a radio podcast on human rights. I had no special training. I'm an ordinary citizen who just thought something needs to be done and started taking steps. You can too. Youth for Human Rights and United for Human Rights have put together wonderful materials that make it very easy. If you want to get involved but not sure how to start, please feel free to contact me at United for Human Rights. Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you. A very happy Human Rights Day to all.
Hello, I'm Melanie from Germany. I'm supporting human rights because I think the awareness of human rights is fundamental. With human rights education, it's possible to live together in peace and to respect each others and also to raise your voice if human rights are violated. Congratulations, Youth for Human Rights, to your 20th anniversary and for your ongoing education in human rights. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Good morning. I'm Soraya Mazza from Miami, Florida, USA. As a human rights activist, I'm really glad to be with all of you today. I believe that human rights education is the path to create a society with respect and understanding. And that's the importance of the work that we are doing. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Ladislas. I am from Rwanda. I'm happy to be part of the 28th anniversary celebration for Human Rights International. Human rights has been a platform where young generation learn about their rights and become human rights advocates in their families and the community. Happy anniversary.
Love all of that. Thank you so much, Ellen. I've gotten to work with her a little bit. She is as lovely as she seems as a person and has done amazing work, and we really appreciate all of it. There are a lot of questions I'm seeing, just a lot of comments, and again, greetings from all over the world. It's so amazing. I just really want to reinforce what she was saying about getting involved and just starting, taking your first step to get involved in concrete, raising awareness and educating folks just in your local community, in your schools, right where you live. If you go to youthforhumanrights.org or humanrights.com, just start engaging with a website and you'll see there are incredible materials. They walk you through it step by step. Their entire curricula, various curriculums for different ages. So there's an incredible number of resources there through both those websites. So we'll talk about it a little bit more toward the end of the event. But again, youthforhumanrights.org or humanrights.com, either one, that will get you started for that. So I see a lot of questions about that. So good. Our next speaker is Mr. Guillermo Upe, founder of the Foundation for International Democracy. A fearless defender of human rights and dignity, he has spoken out on numerous violations, including slavery internationally. His International Museum for Democracy exposes abuses and through the interactive exhibits, raises awareness to help improve human rights. Mr. Upe will be speaking through an interpreter. Welcome, Mr. Upe.
Thank you. Comienzo con dos deberes incumplidos. El primero, no tener un buen inglés para poder comunicarme mejor. Y el segundo, esa mala costumbre de no preparar mis discursos. Sinceramente, quiero agradecer a los organizadores por este espacio, ya que para mí es un verdadero honor participar en este evento. Felicitar a los jóvenes por los derechos humanos por estos 20 años de lucha, de difusión, de educación, de acompañamiento, de no bajar los brazos. 20 años de amor al prójimo. Debo confesar que es una organización de la cual tengo un profundo respeto y una convicción y admiración muy profunda. Quiero felicitar a Mari, a Raúl y a todos aquellos que forman parte de esta organización, que como todas las organizaciones se nutren de dos insumos básicos y fundamentales. El primero es el deber cumplido y el segundo es el premio a los pares, a aquellas organizaciones que sueñan un mundo mejor y que luchan por él. Tengo ese problema de no poder escribir los discursos y hablar desde el corazón. Muchas veces que me han dicho que es un grave error, pero me atrevo a hacerlo porque me siento como en casa y me siento con amigos, ¿no? Eso es lo que es para mí Jóvenes por los Derechos Humanos, ¿no? Amigos. Y sabemos que hemos transitado un flagelo muy grande que fue la pandemia. El ADN humano estaba conformado desde sus inicios por tres grandes pilares. El primer pilar era poder viajar, ¿no? El hombre desde su inicio fue migrante. El amor, el poder abrazarnos y la previsibilidad como tercer pilar. De un día para el otro, la pandemia nos obligó a resetear nuestra vida, a cambiarla, y nos provocó profundas depresiones y grandes inestabilidades. De un día para el otro, los estados nos dijeron, no pueden viajar más, no pueden besar a sus padres, a sus hijos, no pueden abrazar a sus amigos. Y mañana, quién sabe qué pasará. Se terminó la previsibilidad. Y esto ocasionó una gran crisis. Pero no descansaron, desafortunadamente, las violaciones de los derechos humanos. En Chile, en Bolivia, en Colombia, en África, grandes migraciones forzosas por cuestiones étnicas, religiosas, ambientales, se produjeron a lo largo de estos 2 años de pandemia. Y como dice Mari, educar, educar y educar es el camino. Pero quiero que juntos hagamos una reflexión y que tiene que ver con que el 10% de las personas más ricas del mundo concentran el 80% de la riqueza mundial. Y esto es realmente un crimen de lesa humanidad. Para que tengamos idea, si tendríamos que hacer 1 minuto de silencio por cada niño que muere de hambre en el mundo, la humanidad estaría en silencio más de 1 año y medio. Es una deuda pendiente. Por eso amo estas organizaciones. Las amo porque seguimos luchando. Las amo porque seguimos soñando con un mundo mejor, más inclusivo, más equitativo, más justo. Las amo porque tenemos la profunda responsabilidad de generar esa revolución de la paz, del amor, de la educación y de la protección a la vida. Las amo porque tenemos la responsabilidad de llevar adelante, como lo hace tantos años, más de 20 años ahora, Jóvenes por los Derechos Humanos, de guiar a nuestros jóvenes, de asesorarlos, de acompañarlos, de guiarlos para que generen esa revolución que nuestro mundo necesita. Es imperioso que esto lo hagamos. Afortunadamente la virtualidad nos acerca. Podemos abrazarnos desde la manera virtual. Podemos acercarnos. Hoy yo debo confesarles que con todos ustedes de todas partes del mundo me siento profundamente acompañado. Porque de eso se trata. Porque siento que somos muchos los que luchamos por el mismo objetivo, que no es más ni menos que la defensa de este mundo, la defensa de la tierra y la defensa de la humanidad. Por eso estoy profundamente agradecido por aquellos que organizaron este espacio. Y para mí, como dije antes, es un verdadero honor. Y profundamente agradecido por Mary, Raúl y todos aquellos que luchan en estas organizaciones de derechos humanos, activistas y pensantes, desarrollistas, que hacen generar la posibilidad y el sueño de que esta revolución del amor, la libertad y la paz no fracase. Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much, Mr. Upe.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for being here.
It's good my English, no?
Fantastic. Yes, much better than my Spanish. Yeah, that was excellent. Thank you so much. Our next awardee is Costa Rica Congressman Jorge Luis Fonseca Fonseca, an attorney at law and member of the Legislative Assembly for the province of Heredia. He has served more than 30 years in public service, excelling in the areas of human rights, government and administration, women's rights, the environment, and international law. Welcome, Mr. Fonseca.
En noviembre del año 2018 recibí como diputado de la República la visita muy agradable de un grupo de jóvenes que pertenecen a una asociación que se llama Youth for Human Rights International. Ellos me visitaron con el objeto de plantearme la posibilidad de que como diputado presentara un proyecto de ley que contuviera la Declaración Universal de los Derechos Humanos, pero para que fuera estudiada en el sistema educativo costarricense. Ese intento que inició en el año 2018 no tuvo un final feliz. Pero el tema tan importante como es, lo impulsamos en un segundo proyecto de ley. Y ese proyecto de ley sí llegó a buen puerto. ¿Por qué llegó a buen puerto? Porque los estudiantes costarricenses, a partir de este año, tienen la oportunidad y el Estado debe velar porque en el sistema educativo costarricense se impulse y se estudie la Declaración Universal de los Derechos Humanos en toda su amplitud, en el contexto en que se dio, cómo surgió la historia de la Declaración Universal de los Derechos Humanos. En nuestro país, una encuesta en el año 2019 reflejó que los costarricenses no tienen mucho conocimiento del significado de la Declaración Universal de los Derechos Humanos y también sirvió como elemento para impulsar en esta segunda ocasión este proyecto de ley que hoy se convirtió en ley de la República. Creemos con esto que hemos hecho un gran aporte al sistema educativo costarricense, porque la Declaración Universal de los Derechos Humanos debe ser considerada en cualquier sistema educativo para que el joven estudiante sepa cuáles son los derechos que le son inherentes, simple y sencillamente por el hecho de ser humano. Y en eso tenemos que hacer todos una participación y un trabajo muy fuerte, porque todos los jóvenes merecen saber eso. Mi país hoy goza de una ley que le permite hacer eso, pero no se quedó simplemente en el estudiantado. Fuimos más allá. Le dimos la oportunidad en la misma ley a la empresa privada que así lo desee conmemorar ese día con actos alusivos a la Declaración Universal de los Derechos Humanos, para que no sea solo el educando el que tenga esa oportunidad, sino también la persona que no ha podido tener educación formal, pero que trabaja en el sistema privado costarricense, sepa que a él también le son inherentes muchos derechos. Quisimos cubrir ambas partes, el sistema educativo, el sistema laboral, la empresa privada. En este país, hoy podemos sentirnos muy orgullosos de que una asociación Youth for Human Rights, a quien felicito en su 20 aniversario, haya tenido esa iniciativa acogida por un diputado de la República de Costa Rica, para que hoy esas mentes de esos jóvenes que cultivan, que desarrollan, que promueven los derechos humanos, la Declaración Universal de los Derechos Humanos, se sientan satisfechos porque alguien, acompañado de muchos señores diputados, creyeron en esos esfuerzos y con el aporte del primer poder de la República de Costa Rica, hoy la Declaración Universal de los Derechos Humanos es una realidad para el sistema educativo y para la empresa privada que así lo quiera promover. Jóvenes, ustedes que van a ser los dueños del mundo, cultiven en las personas que no tienen la oportunidad de conocer la Declaración Universal de los Derechos Humanos ese sentimiento que a ustedes los motivó a impulsar este esfuerzo y que hoy es ley de la República. Les agradezco mucho, estoy agradecido de por vida de que hayan pensado en este servidor para promover este proyecto de ley que llegó a muy buen puerto. Y a todos ustedes, las personas que promueven, desarrollan la Declaración Universal de los Derechos Humanos en todos sus principios, en todos sus artículos, los felicito, porque personas como ustedes necesitan el nuevo orden mundial. Necesitamos que los humanos sepamos cuáles son nuestros derechos y que los que no lo saben, que haya defensores de ellos. Y si hacemos universal el conocimiento de la Declaración de los Derechos Humanos, universal serán los resultados positivos que todos obtendremos. Y desde Costa Rica, en el primer poder de la República, les deseo los mejores éxitos en este fin de año y las buenaventuranzas para los años que vienen.
Good morning. I'm Braulio Vargas from Costa Rica. I'm here in the Democracy Park, very happy to be part of the celebration of 20th anniversary of Youth for Human Rights International and International Human Rights Day. As a lawyer and human rights activist, I believe that through human rights education, we can create a society based on respect, on human dignity, tolerance, and peace. Youth for Human Rights International, thank you. Long life and prosperity.
Hello, my name is Leah Chalmers Monterosso, and I'm the co-founder and executive director of Youth for Human Rights Guatemala. It's great to be celebrating the International Day of Human Rights and the 20th anniversary of Youth for Human Rights International. It is very rewarding bringing human rights education to the culturally diverse population of Guatemala, enabling them to become advocates for their human rights.
Buenos días desde Buenos Aires, Argentina. Mi nombre es Mabel Padilla y es un honor para mí formar parte de Human Rights Internacional y celebrar el 20º aniversario de esta organización de la que soy parte. Y además festejar el Día Mundial de los Derechos Humanos. Este libro siempre está conmigo, porque la educación es la respuesta para todo. Gracias.
Love all of it. So good. I'm reminded again, you can see the diversity in what people do for a living, what brought them to human rights, where their level of interest is. And it's just a reminder that you don't have to have a particular degree. You don't need to be a certain age. You don't need to have a certain profession to contribute and to volunteer and be a part of this movement. It's really what is important to you, what's real in your life and your community. How can you contribute? And always it just takes that first step to get things going. So encourage again everybody to check out the websites, get involved. There's so much support, so many great materials there to be used. And it really is just about doing the first thing and seeing. I promise you, you will love it and have an amazing experience with it. Our next speaker is Ms. Laura Guercio. She's president of Legal Aid Worldwide. As a lawyer, she serves on the management board of the European Fundamental Rights Agency, the International Criminal Court, and as senior researcher in EU and international projects in the Middle East and North Africa region. Welcome, Ms. Guercio.
Thank you, Will, for your presentation, and hello, everyone. Allow me to start by thanking Dr. Mary Shuttleworth, Youth for Human Rights International, and all its members for inviting me to this important conference, which will commemorate Youth for Human Rights International 20th anniversary. It's really a deep honor for me to be with you because, let me say, Dr. Shuttleworth, your work has made concrete and effective the principle that the recognition of the dignity and of the equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family is the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world. This is the core principle of one of the General Assembly's most important contribution to humanity, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, a treasure of multilateralism work that positively affects the lives of every person of the planet. And today I'm really very happy to celebrate with all the speakers the 73rd anniversary of this document, which is an extraordinary achievement, which continues to be the strongest foundation to promote and defend human rights, and to pay also, together with you, tribute to the person who made and who make human dignity the basis of our coexistence in the world. Like you, Dr. Mary Shuttleworth, we all know that you received the 2019 Peace Summit Medal for Social Activism in recognition of your extraordinary work to educate the youth of the world on the importance of human rights through the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Everybody should have the commitment to make the Universal Declaration effective if we want to live in peace. Allow me to make just two remarks, one positive and one, I wouldn't say negative, but at least realistic. First, the positive one, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights does not only reflect a collective aspiration to establish a world order based on human dignity, but it has, in fact, transformed the world. It has made it better. Its 30 articles contain universal ideas like the right to life, freedom, justice, the right to education, health, housing, food, and work, which have been sources of inspiration for almost every international convention, protocols, and instrument, including also the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, whose goals fully guarantee human rights. However, many human rights violations continue. Let's consider the situation of children armed conflict. My colleague, other speakers before, Helen, for example, recalled the situation of children. Let's consider that we have, according the last United Nations data, 25,000 violations against children armed conflict occurred only in 2020. Consider women who are victims of sexual violence and inequalities. A new report from the United Nations say that in 33 countries since the pandemic, 2 in 3 women reported that they are victims of violence, or they know about women who have been victims of violence. Consider also that there are still millions of human beings who are not free or equal and have not yet been freedom from free and poverty and hunger and inequality. Other speakers have recalled also other crimes like racism, discrimination, all violations, for example, killing and maiming against children, recruitment and the use of children, sexual violence, abduction, attacks on school and hospitals during armed conflict, and denial of humanitarian access. Then what should we do? We are here together just to talk about it. First, I think that to make human rights effective, we must avoid setbacks in agreements that we have already established, as well as the politicization of human rights. Human rights are for everyone, but selective interpretations of their validity in accordance with geopolitical or economic or also religion interests set the stage to weaken them. In this time of crisis and instability, other speakers have recalled this situation. When the international system faces numerous challenges, we are more than ever obligated to uphold the principle of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. If we don't make the Universal Declaration of Human Rights a reality, humanity will be faced with fear, division, and conflict. Then, and it's my last point, the fight for human rights is permanent, and it must be a part of our daily efforts. In this regard, civil society organizations are at the forefront of making significant progress towards the implementation of human rights. Allow me to say that one of the most important steps is to provide educational resource on human rights. Everyone must be aware of being a holder of inalienable human rights. I know that this is the purpose of Youth for Human Rights International, with its main activities aimed at educating, informing, assisting individuals, educators, organizations, and governmental bodies in the dissemination and adoption of the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights at every level of society. It is an important sign that Youth for Human Rights International education materials were translated to 27 languages and disseminated to over 190 nations. Congratulations. And it's a sign that so many young people work as a volunteer for spreading a strong culture of human rights. But institutional and the government must play their role as well. More than ever, multilateralism needs to go back to its roots, feed on the aspiration and the ideals of men and women who, at the birth of the United Nations, worked for a world not dominated by dictatorship and violation of life and human dignity. I believe that in celebrating this day today, more than ever, we must affirm the hope of creating a multilateral world in which wars can be avoided and in which the value of life is respected above any other material or geopolitical or religious consideration. We must prove that the ideal of justice, equality, and freedom is not a utopia, and that the Declaration is still the basis of our common life, and as it was in 1948 when it was adopted. My warmest wishes to you, Mary, Mrs. Shuttleworth, and all the young people who work with you is please never stop doing your wonderful work. Thank you so much for your attention and for inviting me also today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Guercio. Well said, as always. Appreciate your contribution. So our next speaker.
Thank you, Will.
Yeah, my pleasure. Yeah, always a pleasure to talk to you. Our next speaker is Youth for Human Rights Ambassador Demi Durrett, a graduate of Columbia University, Barnard College. She served as assistant to the U.S. representative to the 76th session of the United Nations General Assembly. She has worked with Youth for Human Rights International since her early teens and has presented YHRI to national and international leaders. Welcome, Ms. Durrett.
Well, thank you so much, Will. It's an honor to be with everyone today, and it really feels like coming home for me to see so many wonderful faces again that I've been able to see at international human rights summits, and just a really great day to be able to celebrate with everyone. I have to say, I'm here at the UN, and it's really great to follow in Laura's footsteps and reaffirm this commitment to multilateralism that we are so lucky to have Youth for Human Rights espousing. So I just wanted to wish everyone a very happy early International Human Rights Day and a very, very happy 20th anniversary to Youth for Human Rights International. Like I said, I'm really honored to be celebrating with all of you, and it's a pleasure to join just such an esteemed group of educators, activists, and community leaders today as I get to talk to you about one of my favorite topics, and that is human rights education and youth activism. So today what I'm going to do is to tell you a story about a girl from Texas, who, along with the help of her mom, created one of the largest human rights events in the US and became a youth ambassador to the International Human Rights Summit at the UN. That girl was me, so I have some personal experience to share. I started after learning that my hometown of Houston, Texas, actually had a horrifying title as one of the worst cities in the world for human trafficking. And I was truly just struck by this and felt called to do something about it. So when I was 14, my mom and I created the Human Rights Walk-In Festival, where thousands of community members joined together to celebrate Human Rights Day and really learn about their rights so that they could not only teach others, but ultimately empower their communities. I think this is something we can all agree is so important. So the event featured speeches from human rights leaders, performances from international dance groups, and over 30 public, nonprofit, and private organizations, all showcasing their own human rights work. I got the word out to an even broader audience when I was invited to speak about the event on an internationally airing TV show. So now, here we are, 10 years later, and our impact has grown exponentially as we've hosted hundreds of events in multiple cities across the United States and provided a space for millions to learn more about their human rights. As a result of my efforts, I was selected to represent my country of the US to participate in annual human rights summits that were held by Youth for Human Rights both in Brussels and in New York. And I really can speak from my own experience and that of many of my colleagues in saying that Youth for Human Rights really creates, I think some of you have attended, just such an incredibly rich environment for activists from around the world to thrive, really by empowering all of us with resources and tools that we need to help our communities. And my experiences both in New York and Brussels have showed me the power of connecting culturally, ethnically, and religiously diverse youth that really get at the core mission of education for all that Youth for Human Rights International espouses.
So whether it was learning from my fellow Colombian youth delegates on how to educate an entire police force in human rights-based practices, or by hearing my Bangladeshi counterparts' experience with community-based building events, Youth for Human Rights International has provided a truly unmatched forum for sharing ideas and maximizing our collective impact. I particularly was inspired by the story of a US youth delegate who, after attending the International Summit, had created a global network of marches in honor of International Human Rights Day. So around the world, I think you have all heard this story many times, youth delegates and human rights ambassadors joined forces to organize walks, whether they were large or small, all unified around this common purpose of raising awareness for the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And we got to see people from all walks of life carrying banners, lanterns, balloons, and signs of the 30 human rights as they walk through their own city streets and country roads. And I think this is just such a great example of how Youth for Human Rights International really just creates connections and does that grassroots activism that we're always, trying to practice. So over my own decade-long project, our hometown advocacy has really grown into a dedicated team of volunteers and a world-class annual event that has similarly touched the lives of millions with its message of peace and human rights. And I really hope that my story shows you that with some serious passion, dedication, and an incredibly supportive community of Youth for Human Rights International, anyone can make a change in our world. You guys are living proof of that every day. And it's really quite an honor to be able to share this wonderful organization with you. So when starting our event, I never would have guessed that I would be meeting with presidents or world leaders or the Pope for that matter. But like I said, I really hope that learning about our story in Texas helps motivate you to join me and countless others who are working to create more peace and more tolerance in our world, which I think we can all certainly agree is something that this world needs now more than ever. So as I mentioned, we really couldn't have done any of this without the incredible support of Youth for Human Rights International. Dr. Shuttleworth, your amazing work has been an inspiration, and we are so, so lucky to have become friends and to have had your support over this amount of time. So I just wanted to congratulate Youth for Human Rights on 20 years, and here's to 20 more of creating more peaceful and sustainable communities. So thank you to everyone, and I really look forward to hearing from the rest of the panelists today.
Greetings from Washington, D.C. I would like to wish you all Happy Human Rights Day and congratulate you on the 20th anniversary of Youth for Human Rights International. It is truly inspiring to see all the difference that has been made in the world because of the hard work of the volunteers, donors, and allies to this movement. In unity, we stand. Thank you.
Hello, I'm John Casey, and it's my pleasure to join you from Nepal to participate in the Human Rights Day and embark the 20th anniversary of Youth for Human Rights International. As human rights activists, we are here to find common ground so that we may help bring new dignity and respect to everyone, regardless of their race, religion, age, gender, and socioeconomic background.
Hello everyone, my name is Kenneth Rubins Kamia from Kampala, Uganda. I am happy to be a part of this 20th anniversary celebrations for the Youth and Human Rights International. Human rights education and awareness is a great tool to a free and loving world. Happy celebrations everyone. Uganda loves you.
Good. I wanted to thank Demi Durrett for her speech. That was lovely and well said. And again, so amazing to see so many faces from all over the world united in exploring human rights, helping people understand their basic human rights. We've had some questions in terms of starting a local chapter in your own community for Youth for Human Rights. Absolutely, you can do that. That is how the movement spreads. So again, if you go to youthforhumanrights.org, humanrights.com, there will be opportunities there. The websites are very user-friendly and will give you the information you need to get that process started. And you can reach out to the folks involved and that'll help you get that going as well. So we are coming toward the tail end of our event, and it's now my pleasure to present our third awardee, Mr. Ricky Virapin from the Canadian York Regional Police Community Services Division. His 30 years of service include community engagement and well-being, youth engagement, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and hate crime prevention. His efforts in crime prevention expanded exponentially through the police headquarters Human Rights Education Classroom. Welcome, Mr. Virapin.
Thank you very much, and thank you so much for this invitation. Dr. Shuttleworth, distinguished guests, excellencies, fellow members of our human family all over the world. Good afternoon from Ontario, Canada. Please accept my congratulations on Youth for Human Rights International's 20th anniversary celebration and for your ongoing work to provide human rights education all around the world. The work of Youth for Human Rights International in 92 countries is certainly leaving its mark at every level of society. Congratulations to you and your team on your awesome accomplishments. And thank you for the very kind invitation to participate in this very special event. I thank you for this very special award, which I accept on behalf of my many policing colleagues, who as moms, dads, brothers, sisters, sons, and daughters in uniform champion the cause of peace building, human rights, and social justice through public service each and every day. In service to the region's, in service to York Region's population of 1.2 million, policing through the lens of human rights continues to define York Regional Police's proactive and response readiness to the many emerging and challenging opportunities brought on by rapid changes in our community. This readiness also necessitates policing with a global mindset to navigate York Regional Police on a steady course into 21st century policing, while building on policing's historic and traditional roles of peacekeeping, peacemaking, to now include peace building. As such, on March 10th, 2020, York Regional Police opened its Human Rights Education Classroom. The classroom is dedicated to all children eager to explore the strength and potential of our shared humanity. The mission statement of the Human Rights Education Classroom is to promote learning and education in human rights and human responsibilities, peace building, and global citizenship, while inspiring action towards peaceful coexistence in an ever-changing world. This early intervention approach and investment in our children and youth growing up in multicultural communities utilizes the lens of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, human responsibility, as well as the 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, as well as Indigenous education to inspire and empower future generations through age-appropriate education in human rights, conflict resolution, and peace building to navigate global communities as they become our future leaders and global citizens in this new millennium. Through approaches such as the Human Rights Education Classroom and the building and strengthening of community partnerships, York Regional Police continues to manage, monitor, and strategically respond to the complexities of micro-geopolitics, always at play in multicultural environments, while simultaneously pursuing all opportunities to build and support socially cohesive, resilient, and inclusive communities. This nurturing of individual and community sense of belonging further enhances quality of life and promotes peaceful coexistence for all stakeholders in our dynamic region. Upon my recent retirement from York Regional Police, I have since had the privilege of joining the Ontario Provincial Police, an organization with a strong legacy of pride, professionalism, and honor in service to the 14 million expressions of human diversity in the province of Ontario. The Ontario Provincial Police is also committed to excellence in policing, and I am so honored to be one of its newest members. So in closing, I convey my sincere thanks and appreciation once again to the Youth for Human Rights International team as you continue to educate and inspire youth of the world on the principles of human rights. Your tireless work is a reflection of the words of the late Nelson Mandela, former president of South Africa. To be free is not merely to cast off one's chains, but to live in a way that respects and enhances the freedoms of others. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bierkin, and for all the amazing work that you do. It's now my pleasure to introduce Mr. Fabio Amicarelli, Humanitarian Programs Director for the Church of Scientology International.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Can you hear me well?
We can.
Great. It's a pleasure to address the thousands of people who are joined with us today and listen to such an inspiring series of speakers. Obviously, there is a growing consensus which has developed among educators, governments, and the society as a whole that human rights education is the key tool for safeguarding those cherished rights. And this tool is needed more than ever. For the societies in which we live are constantly putting to the test our ability to maintain every one of the 30 articles of the Universal Declaration. Take human trafficking. It's a $32 billion a year industry, and 4.5 million trafficked persons are sexually exploited. Since we are talking about the right to receive an education, 72 million children of primary school age are not in any school. 759 million adults are illiterate. The Church of Scientology has historically supported human rights, and in fact, human rights is at the core of who we are. Governments and the society at large must work together to bring about the needed changes through real cooperation. They must start treating as equal all men and women, regardless of color, religion, sex, ethnicity, disability, or other distinguishing characteristics. And government should not feel threatened when NGOs and the general public start taking an increasing role in achieving these goals. On the contrary, it will be a sign of strength for any government to embrace the work done in the private sector. It is time to work together in a united front. Youth for Human Rights is an amazing global organization, and the Church of Scientology is very proud of the work it does day in and day out. And we are equally proud of and support the efforts of the many educators, counselors, and youth advocates around the world who have partnered with Youth for Human Rights in forwarding its humanitarian mission. Today, we celebrate all their accomplishments. We are extremely proud to have made it possible for Youth for Human Rights to have distributed its educational materials to more than 190 countries to the world. We will continue to support its efforts as a beacon for advancing our civilization and bringing the knowledge of human rights to people around the globe. But thank you very much to all of you.
Happy 20th anniversary to Youth for Human Rights International. My name is Sandra Moreno. I represent Tampa, Florida, and I am so thankful for this 20 amazing years of work that Youth for Human Rights has done with all the education on human rights and leading all these youth to become the change that they want to see in this world. So let's celebrate because this is our party and I'm so proud to be part of this amazing group.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Camille et j'ai le plaisir de me joindre à vous depuis Angers en France pour célébrer le 20e anniversaire de Youth for Human Rights ainsi que la Journée internationale des droits de l'homme. Dans mon pays, très peu de personnes connaissent leurs droits, c'est pourquoi il est très difficile pour eux de les défendre. Et c'est également pourquoi je suis très heureuse de me joindre à vous pour défendre cette cause.
Hi everyone, this is Mustafizur Rahman, greetings from Bangladesh. I'm very privileged to be a member of the Youth for Human Rights International Global Family. 20 years ago, it was a dream of Dr. Mary Shuttleworth. No longer is our dream, it's our dream. It's YHRI is a passion, it's a movement, and we won't stop unless and until human rights become a global reality. Happy Human Rights Day and happy 20th anniversary of Youth for Human Rights International.
So good once again. So thank you all so much for being here today. We're going to end the event with a few questions to our panelists who really took time out of their busy schedules to be here, as we all did. We're so grateful to have them and their expertise and insight and experience. So I'm going to ask individual questions, and I really want to acknowledge all of the people who've submitted questions while we've been here live on the event, people who submitted questions ahead of time. I wish we had time to answer absolutely all of them. We would be here for quite a while if we did that. But we really appreciate your engagement. This is really all about you and giving you the tools and the support to go out and make that difference in your own communities and your own lives. So we really appreciate you being here. We're just going to ask a few more individual questions of our panelists, and then we'll be wrapping up the event. So the first question is for Dr. Ramcharan. How many people know about the Universal Declaration? I'm assuming it's a small percentage of the overall population. Is there any way to gauge or measure the total awareness around the world of this document? I put him on the spot. So maybe he needs a moment. Is Michael available to answer a question if we raise that with him?
I am.
Okay, perfect. So the question here is freedom of religion as a right still needed in this new millennium? In other words, is it still an issue around the world? Is it something that we need to underscore and support? Freedom of religion.
Yes, we're in a much more difficult era because religions vacated some of their responsibility in their early stages of development and became themselves violators of rights. We have another standard of truth now, which is a secular, scientific, spiritual standard of truth. We have civil governments, we have religious governments, and they both must cooperate together. We have a generalized government. So freedom of religion has to take place in the context of agreed upon rules of behavior and agreed upon laws for proper management of a society. So both religion and civil governments have to work together, or neither one can have appropriate rights. But the freedom of religion is the freedom of the individual soul to seek a mystery that is so well beyond government and so well beyond the United Nations that if it's not vouchsafed and if we don't defend it, the actual spiritual right of a human being to ascend and know its full divine potential will be dwarfed. And we must really defend religions with our very souls.
Beautifully stated once again. Thank you for that. Couldn't agree more. I love it. The next question is for Laura, if she's available. What is the most violated human right in the world today? Is there such a metric?
Okay. Yes, I think it's very difficult to say because, as I said before, we have a lot of crimes and violation against the human being. We have talked about trafficking, but I can talk also about the grave violations against children affected by armed conflict. Let me say just a consideration that I have very quickly underlined. I think that in order to develop the right to all the fundamental rights included in the Universal Declaration, we really must recreate an international system where the multilateralism system that was affirmed after the Second World War with the institution of the United Nations must once again reassert itself. Instead, in my opinion, I feel we are experiencing a situation of deep division of hegemonies rather than collaboration among government and states. So we have a very great work from civil society organization and and you are an example, but we have in this conference other speakers coming from other civil society association, and we are working together. But at the same time, probably we should ask for a better cooperation among governments. Unfortunately, and I don't remember who among speakers talked about COVID-19, but this is an example of the division that we are experiencing in our days. So I don't think that there is a hit parade of violation of human rights violation, because we have unfortunately many violations. I just thought about violations against children and girls and women. But let's talk, for example, about the denial of to education for girls and women in patriarchal culture. So it's very difficult to say which is the most human rights, the most which is the human rights that is more violated among the other ones. But I think that we have to work for creating a real multilateral system, international relation system.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And obviously all of these rights, they're fundamental as they're described, right? And they're universal, meaning we can't just have some of them being enforced and supported and others not. So it's almost a moot point. We really just need to make sure that everyone is made aware of all 30 and that they're equally supported and defended. Good. The next question is for Demi, if she's available. It's a two-part question. What I mentioned before, what would you say in terms of percentage of the world's population, how many people are aware of the Universal Declaration as a concept or a document, the 30 rights that it contains? And then as a youth ambassador, what's your expectation of what young people can do to take this from being this idealistic dream to being a true reality? You're probably seeing a lot of the comments from people all over the world about particular human rights violations that they've experienced or aware of. What is it that young people can really do to create this new reality together?
Sure, thanks. Well, I think those are both great questions. First, on the sort of metrics point of measuring what are the grossest human rights violations, and then also how many people are aware of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I think that it kind of gets at a point of these things are difficult to measure, right? Especially in whether it be in a remote population or wherever. But I think that just from my own personal experience of over the last 10 years, helping people to become aware of their human rights, I definitely saw that within my own community. The first year people were like, what are human rights? What is this event that you're trying to put on? And as we continued, this sort of ripple effect happened where I started saying, oh yeah, the human rights event is coming up in December. Oh, we're going to go to that. And that just becomes, a way to just plant a seed that continues to grow. That person tells their family tells their friends at school or their coworkers. And I think that's the power of grassroots activism. And that's why Youth for Human Rights International has been so impactful. And I think that that's what we're here to do. And that dovetails well, I think, with the second question, which is what are youth able to do? I think so often we see these kind of disempowering stories of everything being so bad and all of, this pandemic that's kind of created this chaos in the world. But there's so much opportunity for us with so many tools, with technology, to make such a change. And I've personally been very inspired by activists who are in their teens right now, who are really able to use technology in a way that affects not only their immediate circles, but can create wide-ranging effects. And so I think that it's really wonderful to be able to create a change in our own community to, whether that's putting on an event in your local community or just getting the word out to local community members. But I think that there's so much power in technology right now, and young activists being able to harness that power of social media to be able to use it for good is a really incredible opportunity. There's one account I follow that's good news, and all they do is share inspiring stories of humanity, and it's really wonderful to be able to see the impact that good can have in the world. I think it's underestimated and undervalued in these days, but Youth for Human Rights is such a great example of the power that good people coming together and really uniting under one common purpose can have. So my advice to young activists is really just use your own interests and use your own tools to be able to create an impact. All it takes is a little bit of passion and a little bit of use of your own networks, and you'll be amazed at what you can grow.
Beautifully said. Totally agreed. And I think virtually everyone watching this event is probably aware of this already, but Youth for Human Rights has done a really incredible job of taking what might be considered quite dense legal language of the original document and really bringing it to life so beautifully with their series of public service announcement videos, their story of human rights short film, and then these booklets, which have been translated into, I think, nearly a dozen languages now, or sorry, 2 dozen languages now. So please, again, go to the website, youthforhumanrights.org, check out those materials. You would be amazed at the impact you can create simply by sharing those videos. They really are just so beautifully done. They're very moving. They really bring human rights as a concept into real life, how it impacts you day to day in your own school and community and workplace. So really strongly encourage you to check those out, and please share them, because as Demi said, we all need more good news in the world. There's this fire hose of negative information coming at us all the time. It's incredible what you can do and how you can inspire other people simply by sharing positive information. So I strongly encourage that. If Ricky is available, there's a question for you here. In light of the events of this past 2 years, how has the role of police and law enforcement adapted when it comes to human rights in North America?
Thank you very much for that question. And I would first of all start off by saying recognizing that systems are very different in all parts of the world. The system that I operate in within the Canadian context is very different from some of the systems around the world, and the perspective that I will share is what we've been doing in a Canadian context. Certainly, the events from around the world over the past the past 2 years have had a huge impact in police community relationships, in the level of trust and confidence in policing in general. 5 of the key perspectives that we operated from when I was a member of York Regional Police, and we continue to work with, is this. Number 1 is policing through the lens of human rights, and not human rights through the lens of policing, because that means something very, very different. Policing through the lens of human rights recognizes that at a very foundational piece, human rights has to be the platform on which policing is built, on which everything that we do is built. And you may have people that say, well, police are not social workers. And I would argue that policing is on the front lines of social work and needs to be in tune with what is happening at every levels of society, because police are the ones that are responsible for responding and safeguarding those principles. So policing through the lens of human rights is number 1. Number 2, based on the context of policing that I come from, is policing with the global mindset, recognizing that beyond the global mindset, there is also the diversity of human experience and human issues related to perspectives, points of view, worldview, identity, and ways of life that impact how people interact. And from a policing perspective, in policing multicultural communities, it's critically important that those types of understandings are front and center in how we police communities. Number 3 is a time of a crisis is not the time to be exchanging business cards. So when we do have crises, it's important that police way before that, get out ahead of time, build the relationships, understand communities, understand all the different perspectives that relate to how communities are served by different police services. It's important to be proactive in the way we work. Number 4, which is focused on policing with humility and policing with empathy. Policing with humility is really a reflection, a self-reflection, and internalizing the awesome authority that is given to police officers. But along with that awesome authority comes awesome responsibilities, and the primary responsibility is service to your communities. The external expression of that is policing with empathy, recognizing that everyone has a point of view. How would you like your family or loved ones to be treated if this was the same situation for them? And finally, number 5, leading with your humanity, recognizing that the uniform should not be a barrier or constrict your humanity, but rather an amplifier of your humanity. So those are some of the things that we've been looking at, some of the strategies that we've been working with as it relates to some of the very critical social and political issues that we've seen in the past 2 years.
Well, I think it's obvious your community is very fortunate to have you, and thank you for doing that work. It's so important, and I'm sure so many people benefit from the work that you're doing, so really appreciate that. And thank you for sharing that answer. So the final panelist question that we have is for Ellen. And, you know, I'm sure you're seeing the comments coming in, and I think the problem of human rights can seem so overwhelming. What could one individual possibly do? What difference would it make? What do you do when it's all around you? You're aware of instances where human rights are being violated. So could you talk a little bit about starting a group in your city, in your town, in your community? What's involved? What could they expect maybe from the Youth for Human Rights community? What kind of support could they expect for that? How complicated or involved is it to start a group in your own community?
Thanks. Well, it's a great question. And I think part of really the biggest hurdle people need to get over is just taking that first step. And, you know, when I started, I really didn't know how to start. And I purchased a couple of the DVDs, of the Story of Human Rights DVDs, and started handing them out. And the response was just amazing. You know, people would watch this and they would say, this DVD is wonderful. You know, how do we get something started? I actually first started, I think, in the recreation centers in Philadelphia. So you'll be surprised at the response that you get. It's no one's going to argue with human rights, really. And they get excited because it speaks to them, you know, and I mean, people know everyone should have these rights. So I guess, you know, there's many ways. Youth for Human Rights has, you know, right on their website, you can, you know, write to them and, you know, say you want to start a group, and there's certain steps that they will, you know, put you through. Or, you know, you can be creative yourself. There's no rules that you have to follow. Even with the educational kits, it's there as a guideline, you know, and you can be creative on, you know, what you want to do. And, you know, schools are definitely a good start. Churches, you know, they like to teach about human rights as well. And, you know, you can look in your community for large or even, you know, whatever kind of nonprofits there that are already doing something about human rights. Sometimes you can even rejuvenate their own purpose because they don't even realize they're supporting a human right. So there's just lots of people that you could contact. I think most big cities have a United Nations Association. And obviously, we all need the Youth for Human Rights and United for Human Rights in major cities and small towns, because everyone needs to know. And I think I had said earlier too, I'm not sure what percentage know, but 8 billion is certainly a large number. So plenty of good work to do out there. And really, if anyone ever wants to contact me, I'm happy to, you know, communicate with you back and forth on what you can do to get started. But the important thing is to start. Did I answer your question?
You absolutely did, and couldn't agree more that the most important step is the very first step. And it can be as simple as you can go on YouTube and you can find these beautiful public service announcement videos, the Story of Human Rights short film. You can even just share that on your social media. Even doing something simple like that it may not seem like much, but you might inspire someone else to really take something on in their own community, or who's having a very difficult time. That might be the lifeline that they need to start thinking more positively about their experience and finding solutions that they hadn't thought of. So just taking that first step is really just vitally important. Yeah, thank you so much for that, Ellen. Well, we are here now at the point of wrapping up this event. I want to one more time introduce Dr. Mary Shuttleworth, President of Youth for Human Rights International, to make final comments. Again, I just want to thank everyone for being here and participating in such an amazing event. So to give the final word, and then I'll just do a very short wrap up at the very end, I want to pass the baton back to Dr. Mary Shuttleworth.
Thank you so much, Will. Congratulations. Wow. I'm almost overwhelmed by the enormous passion, empathy, and goodwill pronounced so eloquently by so many and from such a rich diversity. I must admit to fighting a tear or two. Okay, that's probably being conservative. This was truly emotional for me. We've come a long way, and I'm sure as you are as profoundly touched as I am. Congratulations to our awardees. We are so proud of you. The work you've done is outstanding, and we really commend you. Thank you to our esteemed panelists. You brought such rich diversity and literally centuries of experiences and knowledge to our panel, sharing it with our youth, and that is so important to us. Thank you so much. I want to thank the amazing little vignettes that we received from around the world. Wow, many of you, I've been there with you on the ground and just seeing you and seeing your where you are. Truly emotional. Okay, you helped to bring some tears. So yeah, thank you so much for your amazing work, your amazing wishes. I also want, on behalf of Youth for Human Rights and our whole human rights family, I want to thank everybody who over the past year has sent in letters, proclamations, certificates, awards to our whole team. And that includes, of course, you, everybody, our whole human rights family, for the amazing work you've done. I want you to know that we've received hundreds and hundreds of letters. In fact, I lost count, so maybe by now it's already almost 1,000. And every single letter just expressed the importance of human rights education and congratulated everybody on the work you've done. It's taken absolutely everybody to get as far as we are now. And just look at us now, how exciting. So with such dedication and support, together we now look to the future, enriched by lessons learned and star-high goals. We surge unwaveringly toward the future, where the generations prevailing 20 years on are able to acknowledge that human right has at last risen to make human rights a reality for all time to come. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mary, as always, for all the amazing work that you do. Again, happy 20th anniversary and all these accomplishments. And to see an organization like this growing and flourishing and becoming bigger and bigger, as it's so well deserved and it's so needed. I do my own nonprofit work, and I just really want to speak to the power of connecting up with a group like United for Human Rights, Youth for Human Rights. They really are extraordinary, just unusual. Just the amount of support, the amount of encouragement, the quality of the materials that you're sharing with people, it really just puts you at the upper echelon of anybody doing this kind of work. So I strongly encourage you to participate. As we wrap up the event here, there's two very specific things I'd like to leave you with. The first thing is, if you go to youthforhumanrights.org, there is an online course that you can do. It's absolutely free. Anybody can do it. If you're looking for ways to just get started, I strongly encourage you to go online, do that free course, share it with absolutely everybody you know, any groups you're part of, friends, family, school, work. Just doing something as simple as that will help raise awareness. If every single person at this event did that, it would be an amazing ripple effect just from taking that one free course at youthforhumanrights.org. The other thing is there's going to be a survey once we're done with the event here. It's going to pop up on your screen. It might seem like an afterthought or like it's not that important. We really value your feedback. You're going to help inform future events. We want to know what you liked, what you'd like to see for future events, things like that. So please just take a few minutes. We absolutely want to hear from you, and we really appreciate your support. Keep in mind this entire event, everything that Youth for Human Rights does, it's all done on a volunteer basis. So these are all people just like you that want to make the world a better place and have decided to put their time and energy and money into this to truly try to make the world what we all know that it should be. So again, one more time, I want to thank all the panelists, everybody involved, all the volunteers behind the scenes who spent countless hours putting an event like this together. Thank you so much for joining us from all over the world. Again, one more time, youthforhumanrights.org, humanrights.com. Please check out those resources. Please get involved. I promise you, you will be so happy that you did. And very happy International Human Rights Day. And again, 20th anniversary of Youth for Human Rights. Congratulations. Take care, everybody.